Good evening all and welcome. In tonight's video, we're going to be heading into some eateries for some stories with people who you'd rather not meet. I'd also like to thank Mr. Revenant for joining us in tonight's video. If you enjoy his work, feel free to check out his channel. A link, as always, will be at the end and in the description. Finally, I'd like to apologize for Saturday's comp. A lot of you were complaining about the sound of the rain. You know, it sounded different without headphones, but then when I put them on, I realized I had made a huge error in judgment. So sorry for that. The next comps won't be anywhere near as loud with the background. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. I was about 19 and still in college at the time. I've always had a hard time studying at my house, so I would usually go to a coffee shop in the evenings / late at night to study. Around that time, I would go to the McDonald's near my house, grab a burger and study in one of the booths since it was closer and I didn't want to drive to the city. This day I was sitting in the booth closest to the bathroom when an older man walks by in his 70s on his way to the bathroom. He stops to look at me and tells me that he loves my hair. I thank him and go back to studying, but he was still standing there. He continues, "My mother used to have chestnut-colored hair like that. She was beautiful." I'm trying not to be rude, so I respond with something generic and go back to work. He then sits down at my table uninvited and begins talking to me about his daughter, who is likely about my age. He goes on and on about how he likes to visit her and play music for her. He pulls out his phone and tells me he's going to show me a video of her. While I'm not thrilled that he's sitting with me, he seemed harmless and maybe a little lonely, so I let him enjoy some company. He pulls up the video and shows it to me. To my horror, it's shaky footage of a girl that was likely in her 20s, laying in a hospital bed in what appeared to be a vegetative state with her mouth gaping wide open, while I assume he was talking and singing to her in the background. He then breaks it to me that she's in a coma. I don't even remember what I said exactly, but I think I expressed how sorry I was that she was in that condition, and tried to call my boyfriend who was meeting me there after work. It's about 11 p.m. now. The man is sitting at my table, oversharing details about his life with me while I am clearly weirded out and trying to ignore him. He then gets up, and I watch him walk out the front doors to a large white van. The man opens the side door, and from what I could tell, he had been living in the van. The glimpse I got from the inside showed me a lot of cluttered belongings, such as clothes, bedding, and boxes. He crawled in and I thought he was gone for good, and I go back to studying for my big math test. I hear the front doors open again and look up. It's him. He walks directly back to my table and hands me a business card. He tells me to vote for him for the president and that he's out campaigning, and eventually goes back out to his van and takes off. The card just had his name and "For President" written on it with a cheesy slogan. Needless to say, after that, and a few run-ins with a homeless man, I stopped studying at McDonald's. To the presidential candidate living out of his van, let's not meet. I was 16 and working in a locally owned fast food restaurant. Everyone working was teenagers, except the owner, an adult man called Fred. I was working the cash register in front, but had no customers. My co-worker, a fellow teenaged girl, came running up to me, insanely flustered, grabbed my arm, and began dragging me to the drive-thru, whispering on the way that I needed to look out the window. The whole thing happened so fast I didn't even question her, I just did it. There was a grimy little old man idling at the window. His pants were undone and he was exposed. Now, I don't stick around and stare at the situation, so I can't say for sure, but it did not strike me as accidental. I whipped around the corner and darted for our boss, and spilled what was going on. Fred was probably around our parents' age. To my surprise, he didn't say a word. He bolted out of his seat and to the back door. Seconds later, Fred came charging around the building, shrieking like a lunatic, running at the car. The flasher saw him coming and took off. All of us employees were totally shocked. Fred was a really mild-mannered guy. I'd never seen him so much as frustrated, It had appeared he was going to murder the dirty old man. As teenage girls, this was our one real encounter with a major pervert, so we didn't know how to feel or react. We were all giggling nervously and awkward when Fred stormed back in the door. He snapped at us to stop laughing. I'll never forget what Fred said next. There are a lot of bad people in this world, girls. There are going to be men like that who try stuff and worse. You can't ever let them get away with it. That man just assaulted you, and it's not funny and it's not okay. Some things you can joke about, but sexual assault isn't one of them. He then called the police. Fred is still working at the restaurant, and I sure hope he doesn't retire before my daughter is old enough to get her first job.
So I work in a restaurant. One night, we were short-staffed, and I had help on the floor. So the waitresses were just me and a young girl called Anna, and our manager, David. Anna was 18, and an absolute knockout. On this cold, dreary Monday night, she still looked like a movie star. It wasn't too busy, so we were going okay. Towards the end of the evening, there were only a couple of tables left, all in my section. So when the last table came in, he was put in Anna's section. This guy was a real hipster. He had a giant beard with a little braid in it. He ordered his meal and pulled out his own bottle of sriracha sauce. He had swallows tattooed on both hands. As Anna took his drink order, I shot her a look, as if to say, have fun with that guy. About 40 minutes later, Anna had gone for a smoke, so I asked Hipster Dude if he wanted anything else. How about your friend's number? I laughed him off, and he ordered a refill on his Pepsi. A little while later, Anna comes into the kitchen to find me. She told me that the Hipster Dude had asked what time she got off work. She told him she could go when we closed. He told her he would wait for her shift to finish. She said no thank you. Hipster Dude then said, well, these Pepsis are unlimited, so it doesn't look like you'll be getting rid of me anytime soon. As Anna explained all of this, she looked very unsettled. I asked if she wanted to leave. She said no, because her housemates wouldn't be back until late, and she had forgotten the door key. So I found David, the manager, and told him what happened. He uselessly said he would keep an eye on things. I told the chefs that after Anna's shift, they were going to go walk her to her car. They agreed. Hipster Dude left around 10 minutes later. The night finally crawled to an end, and Anna waited for the chefs to finish so that they could walk her to her car. I got changed and went over to the hotel next door to the restaurant because I needed to pick up some paperwork. As I crossed the car park, I noticed this van. It was black, with rust on the side panels. It had blacked out windows. The headlights and engine were on. As I got to the other side of the van, I saw a hand hanging out of the window, holding a cigarette. A hand with a swallow tattoo. I walked calmly towards the hotel and then sprinted around the building to the back entrance of the restaurant. I found Anna and the chefs, just getting ready to leave. He is still here. He is outside waiting in some creepy van. Don't go out there, I panted. Upon reflection, these probably weren't the right words to have used. Every one of us was panicking by now, save for David, who was in the office. So we came up with a plan. Anna would stay inside, by the door with one of the chefs. Me and the other chef would go out to the car park. I would drive Anna's car right up to the door, and she would get in and drive with one of the chefs back to her house. The chefs lived near her anyway. The plan went off without a hitch, except for the fact that as soon as Anna's car pulled away, so did the creepy van. I started calling the chef in Anna's car frantically. He's following, I said. He was, said the chef, but he just turned off. He isn't behind us now. Relieved, I walked over to the hotel and spent about 20 minutes sorting out order forms and other paperwork. I helped David lock up and then walked to my car. In the inky blackness of our restaurant car park, late at night, I heard the crunching of the gravel underfoot. Then when I got into my car and stopped walking, the footsteps didn't stop. I heard crunch, 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 and then a whisper. Why couldn't you have just let me have her? I leapt into my car, locked the doors, and sped away.
I was a kid, perhaps 8 or 9 at the time. My family and I decided to go to Swiss Chalet for dinner. My Canadian friends will know what this is, but for the rest of you, it's a rotisserie chicken restaurant, which was normal for us, so that's not the creepy part. I ended up taking a bathroom break and had to use the only stall there. When I got inside, no one else was there, and I was on my lonesome. A few minutes pass and another man enters, an older fella judging from his steps, and I could make out his shoes. They were typical black, boxy-looking dress shoes. As he got inside the bathroom, he was whistling and singing along to the song playing over the speaker. So far, everything was fine. He went over to one of the 2 urinals, used it, began washing his hands, and then out of nowhere started swearing profusely. And what felt like was directed at me, saying all kinds of lovely things, which, by the way, were not part of the song. Now, I was a very shy kid, so this kind of thing was awful for me. First of all, I'm in a store by myself, which was already scary enough at that age. It gets worse if someone else is inside with me. And then I have this happen to me too? That's a big no-no. The guy was swearing for what felt like ages. Possibly a good 5 minutes. Not to mention his voice became very hoarse, and all of a sudden, when he was swearing, he sounded slightly demonic, but almost whispering. I couldn't do anything and ended up pulling my feet up towards me to try and hide and prevent myself from crying. I felt helpless, and like I was going to be hurt. Finally, he stopped and left, only to literally come back in for a second to say one last string of lovely things about me. I stayed in the store for a good 10 to 15 minutes just to make sure he wouldn't return. I finished, cleaned up as fast as I could, and exited the bathroom. I looked left and right before leaving to check to see if anyone was there, and then quickly ran back to my table. I asked my dad if he had entered the bathroom, and he quickly replied no. At first, I actually thought it was him based on the shoes, but my dad's were slightly different. I quickly told them what happened, clearly distressed, but they kind of laughed it off and thought nothing of it. We finished eating and left. I had a quick glance at the restaurant to see if anything stood out to me, but nothing, or rather no one did. Everything seemed normal. We left the restaurant, and it's safe to say I was very scared about going into that bathroom alone again for a good year after that. Thankfully, nothing ever did happen again.
I was 24 and a waitress at a restaurant in Ohio. I came into work like any other day to open. My first table was 2 people, Dale and Sarah. I seated them and proceeded to take their drink orders. They both ordered drinks from the bar and some soda. When I came back with their drinks and complimented my name, Mara, they were saying how unique and beautiful it was, which I get all the time, so it's not weird to me. I asked if they were ready to order any appetizers. They ordered 2 different ones. As I was going to step away to put in their order, Dale asked me if I had a boyfriend. I said yes, I do. Dale said, of course a girl as beautiful as you has a boyfriend. He continued to tell me how beautiful I was. Dale then told me that he and Sarah are just friends. When I came back with their appetizers, I saw I had another table to tend right next to them. As I started talking to the other table, Dale and Sarah start trying to get my attention. Dale was pulling on my shirt. I ignored it, thinking of how rude it was of him. When I came back to Dale and Sarah, Dale asked if I found Sarah attractive. I found this to be a very strange question to ask your waitress, but I didn't want to be rude because I wanted a tip, so I answered yes. He then proceeds to grab me by my waist and pull me close to him. I felt my face go beet red. I laughed out of nervousness. Dale and Sarah both laughed. I walked away to check on my other tables. When I went back to give them their entrees and another round of beer, they proceeded to get more inappropriate. Dale asked me if I ever had a threesome. I didn't answer, and when I didn't, he asked me if I wanted to have one with them. Again, my face went beet red, and I just walked away and went to tell my manager. My manager, asked how big of a bill it was. So far, around $70. My manager then told me that they're almost done eating and to ignore it until they're done. He didn't want to kick them out because of how much they are ordering, so I said okay and went back to tend the table. By this time, they've been there for 3 hours. They took up most of my time, considering we were only open for dinner, which is about 6 hours. I had to give up tables because they wouldn't stop talking to me for 15 minutes non-stop. And when I tried to walk away, Dale would either grab my waist or hand. Sarah asked what time we closed, and I said 10. Again, they asked for more beer. Sarah then asked if I will come home with them after I'm off. I replied, no thank you. Dale was begging me, saying we could have a threesome, that it would be fun. I was so disgusted how he kept grabbing me by my waist, telling me about all the stuff he had. I had enough at this point, and went back and told another waiter to drop off their check. As he came back to the kitchen, he told me they wanted to ask me something before they paid. So of course, I went out there just so they would pay and leave. Sarah and Dale both told me that they will come back at close to get me from work. My heart dropped, and I rushed back into the kitchen. I told my manager I'm not going back out there until they're gone. My manager then went back out to grab their payment, and they were no longer there. They left without tipping on a $90 bill. I was so angry because I had given up tables, because Dale kept grabbing me to stay to talk to them for another 15 minutes throughout the night. They wouldn't let me leave their table. At the end of the night, I asked one of the kitchen guys to walk me to my car. Thank God, Sarah and Dale were nowhere in sight. After this day, I've learned to speak up and no longer let people walk all over me or take advantage of me in any way.
One semester in college, I had an 8 a.m. class, and I was still living with my mum. At the time, I was only 17, and I'm a smaller girl, standing at 5'3". I went to my morning class and didn't have any classes after, so decided to pick up breakfast for my mum and myself. I pulled into the IHOP parking lot and parked and began to order online. For some explanation of this IHOP, it's off a major highway, and there's nothing else but hotels around it. But it was really the only way home. I order online, and it says it will take about 30 minutes, so I hunker down and get comfortable. About 10 minutes, a guy in an old black pickup truck pulls into this parking spot across from me. I noticed after a few minutes that he is just staring at me, and not discreetly with sunglasses or anything, it's really obvious. I just try and ignore and keep watching the videos on my phone and making sure my doors are locked. After about a half hour, I get up and leave my car and realize I have to walk by this truck to get to the door of the IHOP. I take my keys with me, and obviously they had pepper spray on them, and as I get out of my car, I walk past the bed of the truck and hear the guy exit. I was a bit of a walk from the front door, so I spared a glance behind me and see the guy speeding up, walking straight at me. I freak out because no other people are in the parking lot, and you can't see the door from where we were, so I start running to the door of the IHOP and he runs right behind me. But thankfully, I made it to the door just before he reached me. The IHOP had 2 sets of doors, where one is on the right and the other, with a little waiting area in between. And as I get inside the second set of doors to the main area to pick up my food, the guy stops right outside the outer doors and just stares. I'm totally freaked out. But I go to the online order section, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to leave when the older lady behind the desk asks if I'm alright. She looks where the guy is still standing right at me outside and says he'll walk me out. Even a complete stranger could tell how creepy he was being. She walks me out and watches me go to my car from the little outside waiting area, and the guy starts following me as soon as she leaves. I'm thankful that I was already in my car, but he was running to get to his. But as I pull out, he tries to follow my car. I ended up driving around for a while to lose him because he kept following me, and I didn't want him seeing where I lived. I have a very conspicuous car, so I was quite worried about it, because it would take me about 10 minutes of driving on the interstate to lose him. The worst part was my breakfast was cold by the time I got to eat it.
My friend Anna and I were bored one weekend and decided to go to a popular beach to take some pictures and just mess around. So we took pictures and had a really lovely day. Then on the way back, we were starving, so we decided to stop at the McDonald's in the beach town. This town is really famous and nice. All the celebrities live there, and it's beautiful. There's also a super famous restaurant right off the highway on the beach that's known for celebrities and rich people going. This McDonald's was directly across the street from that restaurant. Since many famous people go to this restaurant, and it's on a pretty busy road, most of them have drivers that take them. The drivers would usually hang out in the parking lot of that McDonald's, while their bosses ate across the street. Anna and I didn't know this at that time. We just wanted a McFlurry. So we go to McDonald's, and right when we get out of the car, she starts acting really weird. She triple checks that the car doors are locked and grabs her fancy camera to bring inside. I ask her what's up, and she says there's a group of guys standing in the front of McDonald's, smoking and staring at us, and it was giving her the creeps. I'm a pretty chill and trusting person, so I don't think much of it. It's a busy place in a super nice town. I'm not worried. We go in, and there are a few people in there, about our age. We get our food and sit at the table to eat. One of the drivers comes in and sits a few booths down with his back to the wall, right where he can see us. My back is to him, but Anna gets really creeped out and wants to leave. This guy isn't eating or anything. He's just staring at us. Again, this is a pretty crowded McDonald's in one of the nicest towns in Southern California. So I feel pretty safe. Living in South Central, you get used to the odd creep. Still, Anna was freaked out, so I agreed to go. I just have to run to the bathroom first. It was one of those McDonald's where the counter and the main dining room were in one big room, and then there was sort of a hallway off to the side of the counter with more seating and a bathroom at the end, way in the back. There was also a door going outside right next to the bathrooms. The bathroom had only 2 stalls. I just walked into the first stall, not really paying attention to whether or not someone else was in there. So I'm in there, doing my thing, and then I hear the door open, and I hear Anna call my name. At this point, I'm very confused, since she's supposed to be watching our stuff. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? She asks, are you okay? Yeah, just peeing, I reply. And she was like, oh, okay, and just stands there in the doorway. After a second, I hear her leave, and I'm thinking that's very weird. So I walk out of the bathroom and see her waiting by the door with all of our stuff in her hands. I ask her what's going on and why she came into the bathroom, and she just looks at me really panicky and is like, we need to leave right now. At this point, I'm still not afraid, just confused. We rushed out to the car, and she starts telling me what happened. Turns out, when I walked into the bathroom, the creepy driver followed me a little while after. I don't remember hearing him come in, but maybe I did, and just assumed someone had either been in the stall next to me and was leaving, or had just come to check their makeup or something. I'll be honest, I really wasn't paying attention. I know for sure I wasn't aware that anyone had entered the stall next to me, because he didn't close the stall door when he came in. She was on her phone, so she didn't see him follow me either. A young guy noticed it and went up to my friend, asking if we knew the driver. Frantic, she told him we did not, and ran in to check on me. He was in the stall next to me, with the stall door open, not making a sound. She came in and didn't see him, so she called my name to make sure I was still alive, and he rushed out of the stall past her. She was in shock and didn't know what to do other than gather our things and prepare to run. When we went to her car, he was sitting in his big black car with tinted windows next to us, still staring. We sped off, and when I got home, we called the McDonald's to let them know what happened. They really didn't care. And then, we called the non-emergency sheriff line to report it as well. Eventually, my mom went full mama bear and threatened to blast it all over social media that they didn't take my report seriously, and got hold of someone at corporate from there. They checked their cameras and they saw the guy followed me in. A police report was made. So hopefully, this never happens to anyone else again. Thank God nothing happened, because it was really scary. The guy was sitting in his car, staring at us when we left. Who knows what he was planning on doing? So, guy in the McDonald's bathroom, let's not meet.
A few years back, before I started dating my fiancée, I worked at IHOP. We had a new manager, and she was awesome. She was almost like a big sister. We had this table of semi-regulars, 2 guys old enough to be my dad. One started hitting on me and asking my manager about me. At this point, I'd been single for a while, and she told him to ask me out himself. She meant no harm. So I guess he was alright, attractive enough for his age. He asked me out. And to be polite, I said he could just leave his number. I felt uncomfortable but didn't think too much of it. The next weekend he came in and requested my section. I was busy and mostly just went about my business. He asked me a few times why I never called, and I kept responding that I was busy with my 2 jobs and young daughter. So the next week he comes again and requests my section, asking why I never called. I told him once again I'd been busy and was starting to feel uncomfortable. I'd ignored them that day until it was time for the check. They paid, and I thought I had seen the last of him that day. I went over and started talking to my co-worker, when all of a sudden I feel arms around my waist from behind me, and before I could react he kissed me on the side of my face, told me he'd see me soon and left me standing in shock. He came in the next weekend and asked to sit in my section. I panicked. It's probably worth noting I'm a victim of domestic violence from a previous relationship, which made the situation worse. I don't like people touching me, especially people I don't know, and I told my boss I couldn't take the table and why. He kicked them out and told them to never return. The creeper flipped me off on his way out.
As of 4 months ago, my wife and I live in Miami. She's been a native all of her life, and I, a native 500 kilometers north. We have eaten out in downtown for special occasions, like our 6-month anniversary a few months ago. One of these restaurants is a fancy Thai one, and we had tried on a whim, and it was amazing. I run a small catering business that cooks specifically to teenagers with stage 2 outpatient anorexia and their parents. It's a tiny niche I'm proud of. On to the meat and potatoes. Now this weekend, I'm up in Philadelphia by myself, attending my cousin's wedding, as my wife had to cancel at the last minute. All went well, plenty of drinking, dancing, and pizza the size of my head. I walk into Penn Station just now and go get a sandwich to eat on the train. I sit down and I'm about to unwrap it when a guy comes up to me, 5'9", maybe 90 pounds soaking wet, and has that stereotypical shaved head with a beard. He gives me the impression of a generic traveler, and something I can't quite figure out, giving me creepy vibes all around. A messenger bag over his shoulder. He asks, "You going to Miami?" To which I'm caught off guard and answer in the affirmative. This was my first mistake. He asks about my work, and I tell him short answers in an effort to make him bored. Nothing seems to work. He really wants to get to know me. Keep in mind, I don't have any friends or acquaintances who are like this, or any family members who have this personality, and I've never met this man in my life, as far as I can tell. Finally, he asks if I like cooking, and I say yes. I tell him about my business, and he asks me if I've ever been to that Thai restaurant. I answered him, yes, it was amazing. The wife and I went there a few months ago. This was my second mistake. Now I get excited by talking food with anyone, whether it's cooking or eating, or dreaming about food designs, flavors, or the ways in which good food and teas can be medicine and help you feel wonderful after a long day, or relax you when you can't sleep, or get you ready for the day, or even slow time for enjoyment during a break. I ended up getting worked up for a good 15 minutes, just talking. Looking back, it seemed like he was reading my body language and reactions, while nervously looking around the station, as if trying to see who else is listening. When he says, "You don't remember me. We met at that Thai restaurant." I squint in confusion as he says this, because it was only myself and my wife that night. I'm thinking that maybe it was our server, but how would the server remember me months later, in a different city? He stops me to tell me this, and I realize that even though we've been chatting for this long, I still feel sick talking to him. He comments that the food scene in Miami has been up and coming. He tells me his name 4 times slowly and parses out the syllables. He looks over at the police officers walking around and says in a low tone and a smirk, "Good to meet you." He then walks towards the food court and tells back, "I'll see you on the train." Now there's nothing on my clothing or bag that indicates that I lived in Miami or worked there. All of my things still have the logos of my previous jobs or places I volunteered at. As I walk onto the platform, I'm trying to hide from him. I don't think I want this guy to sit next to me for the 10+ hours. Possible con artist and all-round creepy dude. Let's not meet.
I'm 16. I hadn't had a job yet and I really wanted to work. I needed to get out of the house, so I got an interview at Popeyes in my city. I get there around 5 minutes before my interview. I have really bad social anxiety and struggle to speak in certain situations. By the time it was my turn to be interviewed, my nails had been gnawed off. I was very shaky, and I could hear it in my voice. I had been listening to what the previous girl had said. I like examples of what to say or do, so I thought I was ready. No masks were worn, mid-COVID, and this man did not put his on. Perhaps that was the first red flag. He was also looking toward places where I was trying to maintain eye contact. I was wearing one of my mum's cardigans, so I crossed it over my chest. When I did, his attention finally fell back to my face where it should have been, especially since I'm a minor, and he obviously knew that. He bit his lip a lot and would sigh weirdly. It was like a moan. Obviously uncomfortable, I tried to take his attention from me onto some random questions, and started to ask about the restaurant and stuff, but he answered very dismissively. In the end, I get the job. I was told an email was going to be sent to me within the next day or two with my login so that I could start training. That is an important detail. I give it 2 days and I received nothing. I call and they tell me to call back in the next day at 3 because he's out of town. I go to high school full time and don't get out until almost 4. By the time I called, he had gone, and I called multiple other times to no avail. Finally, on the Saturday, he answers. He tells me how I was supposed to stay after the meeting to get my login info from the assistant manager. That's when I'd had enough. I'm already a very short-tempered person, and given this man every ounce that I had. I told him that I applied, and he said I was hired, and he said that I would receive the email with my info, and I wasn't given any other way to contact him. And I thought it was very unprofessional to lie to a new employee, and thought he was a bit of a creep. He tried cutting in, but I told him it was disgusting that he was focusing on my chest, especially as I was underage, during an interview. I told him I didn't want the job anymore, and to get lost, and hung up before he could say a word. Multiple emails after were sent, belittling me and some extremely unprofessional behavior. I blocked the sender's email and still continued to receive more. Multiple calls were also made to my own mother by this guy. We reported him, and thankfully he has since been fired. Note to all hiring managers, when you make a mistake, own up to it. Don't lie to a new employee. We aren't stupid.
Since the moment I started working at this restaurant 6 months ago, the alleyway behind the restaurant has always given me an uncomfortable feeling. The restaurant is located in the middle of downtown, 5 minutes from the Mexican-US border. Since we're located in the tip of Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, the alley itself is not located right behind the establishment, You must walk past its patio, then past our garage, until you reach the side back door that you have to prop open as the door locks behind you once it's closed. During the day, I'll usually see people walking back and forth across the alley when I go to take out the trash. It's typically a safe location though. It is also prominent for its homeless population. They're usually harmless, despite a few that are noticeably mentally ill. My colleagues, I've even gotten to know a few, and have given them leftovers whenever possible. I work as part of the kitchen staff at this restaurant, and most of the time we'll work past 10 p.m. At night, my boss usually never lets the woman take out the trash, just to be safe. Especially a petite 5-foot, Hispanic 28-year-old female. Anyway, since the quarantine started, our kitchen staff has become quite small, so I usually help take out the trash with one of the other men working. This night was pretty slow, and my fellow co-workers and I were encouraged to clean up and leave early. At 9:45, I decided to get 2 of the slightly full trash bags and take them out back myself, assuming someone will see my actions and take the other 2 after me. As I walked past the patio to the garage, my gut began to fluster. I got to the back door and paused. Maybe you should wait, I told myself. But the smell protruding from the bags was nauseating. I pushed the door and propped it open with a brick that we usually kept nearby. The alley was dark and silent. The air felt menacing. The only light illuminating was from the bulb above the door. I walked quickly to the bins and lifted up the top and dumped the trash. Then slowly, a man stood up from the other side of the dumpster. He wasn't very big, but he looked a lot older. He was sweating, and his demeanor seemed agitated. He must have been crouching and waiting for some time. I jumped back. The man looked at me, eyeing me as my steps moved backward. He shook his head, motioning me to stop. He was far too close for me to outrun him. I looked at his bushy dark brows and dark eyes, but it was so dark I couldn't see most of him. His clothes didn't look homeless, but I assumed he was, since it's common for them to be out here at this hour, usually waiting for food. I told him I had no leftovers, but he shook his head again and took out a medium-sized knife. My eyes widened as I took in a breath. I told him, I don't have my purse. I was working. I'm still working. Just come with me, he said, using his knife as a pointer. My mouth grimaced, having no idea where this small amount of courage came from. I said, my friend is coming right now, with the rest of the trash. No, come now, he said, more hurriedly, and stepped closer. And I stepped back again, speaking again with a little more tenacity. They all saw me come over here. There's more trash and he's coming right now. He's outside right now. I just need to yell. You're not gonna scream. I'll hurt you. I don't know what came over me, but I replied with, watch me. We looked at each other, daring each other. Then we both heard footsteps coming from inside the garage, and he ran past me. I stood there, breathing again. I didn't even know I was holding my breath. I turned to see my friend John come out of the door. We're almost done over. He stopped after seeing my face. What happened? I explained everything as tears ran down my face. My friend decided to run down the alley to try to catch him, even though I told him not to, and that he's probably gone by now. It was about 5 minutes until he came back. John relayed to me that there was no one around except for some homeless guy we were familiar with. He asked them if they saw anyone running from the alleyway, and they said yeah, but they didn't recognize the man, and he took off in an opposite direction, towards the border. John took me back inside and told our boss what happened. They called the cops, whose station was pretty close by. They sent someone to patrol the area and gather a description from me, which I gave. My boss let me leave early, and John walked me to my car. He told me it's too bad we don't keep a camera back there. It would have been cool to see how I handled the guy. I smiled slightly, but my stomach was still in knots. He looked at me and apologized. I moved my hand to stop him and told him I'll be fine. Unfortunately, I still work there, but I've been excused from trash duty from now on. Obviously, they never found him. I don't want to think about what would have happened to me if I was more complicit. Something gave me the courage to argue back to him, and thank goodness that my friend came out just in time. So, man waiting behind the dumpster, I hope we never meet again.
This was about 2 years ago. I work at a hair salon and a restaurant opened up next to our store. The food was good, and we would stop by there for lunch once in a while. Well, every now and then, the dishwasher would come up from the back of the restaurant to watch us. It didn't bother us, just watching. He always seemed kind of creepy to me from the get-go. He wore a big, clear apron around himself, like a raincoat top, and just looked grimy, with unkempt hair, dirty moustache, and really old. Well, one day I went in by myself and was short on cash to get some extra chicken for my burrito, so I opted not to get it. I took my food and returned to the salon, when all of a sudden, one of the other employees came into the back and gives me a thing of chicken. The dishwasher guy came in, said he wanted you to have this. Great. I was kind of confused by this as the guy seemed strange. I didn't eat the chicken. Well, one day, I'm walking back to my car. I noticed the cops around. Someone had got arrested in the parking lot. So I kinda tried to take my time getting in the car. Well, who walks up to me but the dishwasher guy? He tries to strike up a conversation with me. Him. How are you? How was work? You know why the cops are here? I gave him short answers. The kicker. Are you seeing anyone? Yes, I'm in a relationship with my boyfriend. I say it quickly, get into my car and leave. Figured it was the end, but nope. This is how our meetings went. He tried to talk to me, I'd get into my car, and he made sure to take the trash out the same time I did. I used to acknowledge him, wave once or twice, try to be nice, but it got so repetitive. He tried to watch me in the restaurant, like purposefully walk out of the back. I didn't go as often, or would have someone else pick me up my food. The big joke in the salon was my creepy boyfriend. We all joked about it. We all knew he put me on edge, but he hadn't done anything bad yet, so I tried ignoring him, and the jokes would continue. But it got stranger. He started watching me work from the salon window after he'd take out the trash just standing there. Thank God I have a male co-worker who can walk me to my car, and when that didn't work, I'd go to the coffee shop next door and have one of them walk me to my car. I was starting to get anxiety about running into the guy because I would randomly run into him. The dishwasher guy came in one day when I was off and seemed disappointed, but got a haircut from one of the other stylists. Big joke I got returning to work was that he was getting cleaned up for me. No thanks. Well, the restaurant wasn't doing well at this point, and the guy just spends his days watching me. The day before the restaurant closes permanently, the dishwasher guy comes into the salon freaking out that he needs to talk to me. My co-workers basically tell him to get lost and that I'm busy. After that happened, the restaurant closed down and I never saw the guy again. I know it ends kind of abruptly, but I'm really glad I never got to see him again. But the anxiety he gave me definitely is something I won't forget, and I hope I don't run into him again.
Hi everyone, I'm Mr. Revenant. I narrate true creepy encounters and let's not meet stories. I hope you've enjoyed this collaboration video as much as I've enjoyed working on it. I want to say a big thank you to Mortis Media for having me on. Thanks, Mort. And thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Revenant, for those words. If anyone would like to check out his channel, like I said, link in the description and on screen now. Thanks as always to my amazing members and patrons. You guys are the best, and I hope you guys have a really awesome night. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.